It was a hit song from one of America's most renowned bands that appeared on the biggest selling album of all time. The story of a 70s classic straight from its creator and songwriter, next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If music brings you joy in life, tell you what, you'll want to subscribe below so you never miss an episode of our daily content celebrating the best of the rock and roll era. Make sure that you also check us out on Patreon for even more specialties, even more behind the scenes. It's time for another episode of our series Revelations, where featured artists reveal rare stories about their greatest songs. On this installment of Revelations, we're going to talk with a great American songwriter, Jack Tempchin. He wrote many classics in the 70s and 80s. We've had him on before, especially his work with one of America's greatest bands, Eagles. Jack was a close friend and collaborator with the late Glenn Frey, having written or co-written several Eagles classics, including Lyin Eyes and Already Gone. And he co-created many of Glenn's solo hits along with Glenn, including You Belong to the City, True Love, and it was true love, right from the start. Smuggler's Blues, and so many more. Smuggler's Blues. Here Jack tells the amusing story of creating Eagles' classic Already Gone from the 1974 double platinum album On the Border. The rocker went to number 32 that same year. It would also appear on Eagles' Their Greatest Hits 71 to 75, which is currently the biggest selling album of all time in America. As we go into the story with Jack, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the brand I always wear. When you go to Zenni.com, you can do a virtual try-on where you can see exactly how the eyewear is going to look on you. And you can make sure it matches your face with Zenni's virtual mirror feature. Check it out today at Zenni.com. Here is Jack with the story. You wrote another classic, or co-wrote Already Gone, with Rob Strandland. That went to number 32 on the Hot 100 and number 12 in Canada, but another song that the Eagles do almost every concert. It's been a staple of their compilation albums. And what inspired that song?
Rob Strandland and I wanted to write a country song, and I grew up in San Diego in the suburbs. I listened to country music at night on the transistor radio under the covers when my folks thought I was sleeping. But I loved a lot of the country songs, and I was running a place called The Back Door at San Diego State University, a big coffee house, and it was supposed to be a bowling alley, but they didn't have the money to finish it off. So I took it over and was running it, and I had a gig there with Rob Strandland. Now he, as far as I was concerned, his parents were country singers. He lived way the heck out, 2.5 miles from me, out in the country, in El Cajon, and he had a horse and wore cowboy boots. So I thought he'll help me. And we're in the back room of the place, and we opened up these big refrigerator, and there was a jug. And we started drinking out of this jug, and turned out to be hard cider. And I had never, I'd never had alcohol or marijuana or I'd never been high on anything. And I don't know why I started drinking this stuff. But suddenly I felt so great. And we wrote the song in about 20 minutes, And then part of the song, the greatest lyric in the song is, "Woohoo!" I just felt so good. And then we got on stage and we did the song, pretty much forgot about it. And I don't think I even did it much after that. I did it one other time. I was playing at a place in Escondido, California called In the Alley. And I was opening for a guy named Jackson Brown. Who hadn't had a record out or anything yet. I'd met him before. So I went and grabbed him and I said, man, I just wrote this song and I want you to sing it with me on stage. And he did. And it was already gone. And then just a few years ago, someone had taped it and they sent me the tape. And there's Jackson, doing the song. But then a couple years after that, when they were doing their third album, Glenn called me on the phone and said, you know that country song? I think it'd make a great rock and roll song. And I go, yeah, sure. And then the next day he held the phone up to the speakers and the big speakers in the studio, and boom, there it was. So it's 3 chords, and they repeat over and over, never changing.
Well, I heard some people talking just the other day.
I guess it was just a feeling. And I only kind of got drunk or high on alcohol that time and one other time. You'd think I would have just kept doing it. If you do something and write a big song, you think, but I never did it again. So there you go.
That's when they switched their producer. They were working with Glenn Johns and Bill Szymczyk. And that, of course, was a huge collaboration with Bill Szymczyk that was very fruitful after that. And a new guitarist, Don Felder, as well, played a Les Paul special on that. Just a rocking song.
Oh, man. Glenn did want to rock. And then a few years later, when he said, man, well, now we got this guy in the band, Joe Walsh. Now we're really going to rock. So.
That also has been covered. Tanya Tucker also had a chart hit with it as well.
Well, I heard some people talking just the other day.
That was nice. Yeah, it was on the Common Thread album, I think.
Wilson Phillips also covering it. Actually, just looking up the lyric here, there was a certain lyric I wanted to ask you about. The letter that you wrote me made me stop and wonder why, but I guess you felt like you had to set things right.
But I guess you felt like you had to set things right.
Just remember this, my girl, when you look up in the sky, you can see the stars and still not see the light. That's right.
Remember this, my girl, when you look up in the sky.
Love that lyric.
I think a lot of that second verse was Rob Stramlin about the letter and all. And then I think I kind of got in it where it was, you can see the sun or you can see the stars, but you're not seeing what it's really about. And I'm out of here.
See the stars and still not see the light.
And I like to think of the song as so much of pop culture is about don't give up. You're flunking out of school, work harder, keep working, keep focusing, keep at it, keep doing it. But a lot of times it's better just to give up and blow it off. And nobody says that ever, except for this song. It's kind of going, this isn't working out, and I'm out of here.
I think I read somewhere that when you sent the tape to Glenn Frey, that it meant something to him because he was just getting out of a relationship and had those similar feelings.
Well, I don't know, because I don't think I ever sent him a tape. He was there that night, I think, when we wrote it, and he had just heard me do it. I don't think he didn't even have a tape of it.
Because I'd read a story that you had sent it to him or something like that. That must not be correct, because he in an interview he had said something like, when I was getting ready to record that song, it was one of those songs that really worked for me because I was just getting out of a relationship and feeling all those emotions.
Yeah.
What stands out to you about Glenn that people should really know? I mean, we've talked about some things about him as a musician, how incredible he is, not only as a musician, as a vocalist and a songwriter, but what about him personally?
And I thought a lot about it too, and even before he died, because I was kind of reflecting on all the years, and there was a couple things really. To me, and I mean, everybody has a different relationship with people. I never worked for Glenn; I was always a partner with him and a friend with him. But he was incredibly honest That's one thing. He would pretty much always tell you, well, I still like you, Jack, but not as much as I did before. You know, if you'd had a disagreement or something. But he was incredibly honest all the time. And I think of basically two people in my life that I would call stand-up guys. And one of them was him, and one of them was my dad. And so it'd be like, you know, no matter how big or important he was, if he said he was going to show up at 2:00, he would either show up at 2:00 or he'd call me and said, hey, I hate to disappoint you, but something came up and I'll be late. But he would never just like not show up and not call or anything. And he followed through like a real stand-up guy, like a real man. Everything and I'm talking about 47 years of experience with him, not just when he was big time and famous, but when he didn't have any money and when he was just like me there. And so the whole thing. So it's very special. You can only appreciate something like that when you look back over the whole thing and you see it. You know, your life's a book and it seems to be just haphazard. And then when a person dies, the book's closed and that was it. And I look at the whole thing and go, man, this was a hell of a guy.
Well, he'll live forever. That's what's really cool about this, is that what is the saying that death is really when the memory or the last person that has a memory of you is gone. That's death. That'll never happen with Glenn.
Probably not.
I wanted to ask you about the new record, and as well as just some stories that you remember about the good old days at the Troubadour, because I think that it's important to realize we've talked about some things that have become lost arts, like liner notes and the record and the album and the album art. But another lost art to some degree is these pockets of musical activity that was happening all over America, New York and Minneapolis and Detroit and LA and Southern California and just all this really cool, San Francisco. And it's just not the same as it was. Tell us about the Troubadour. I mean, that was the cast of characters there: Don Henley, J.D. Souther, Joni Mitchell, Tom Waits, Warren Zevon. So many great musicians that have really inspired the world with their music. What are some things that stand out to you about those days?
Wow, it was a great adventure being part of that. I knew those people that you're talking about, and I went up there early on, and the Troubadour was the biggest club in the country as far as folk type music. And the Monday night hoot, we called it, open mic. It wasn't an open mic. You stood in line and maybe you got chosen. So I went up there and stood in line and I played one time, and then the guy came and said, okay, you don't have to stand in line anymore. You can just call me and you're signed up and you can start playing. And of course, Glenn and JD were playing there as a duo, Long Branch Penny Whistle, and I was their harmonica player when they had a week-long gig there. And that was really cool. And seeing Joni Mitchell.
They played Paradise, put up a parking lot.
I saw Elton John played his first gig in America there.
I've no wish to be living.
Tom Waits.
All my conversations now, I just be talking about
Linda Ronstadt.
I thought I knew what I knew.
So I was usually in the bar, but the bathroom was in the club. And of course, they have to let you use the bathroom because you're in a bar. So they'd have to let you go in the club, walk all the way down, and you could be seeing what was going on stage, you know. And it was just, I thrive on a musical scene of people. It gives me ideas, help me create, makes me want to do things, and that was the most incredible scene of creativity. And every time you saw somebody, you go, wow, I want to write something like that, or I want to. And the Troubadour was just the maximum scene at that time. Uh, it'd be like Graham Parsons came back from England wearing really fancy clothes like Mick Jagger, and he was there. And all these incredible, everybody in the whole country just wanted to play there, and the greatest people just played there all the time. And even sitting in the bar, you just would meet all these people. And ever since then, I'm always looking for another scene or trying to create a scene, and actually never have found one quite as incredible as that.
Well, I think people now with music, it almost, for the younger kids, and even my kids, their relationship with music is so strange because almost like it's just like background. It's like the forefront is video games and YouTube shows where they're watching people play video games, and I just think, and then music is kind of in the background, whereas that was my window to the world. I mean, I was getting a record and putting it there, and I wouldn't leave my room for several hours, listen to every song, and if it didn't have the lyrics, I'd write down the lyrics, and just obsessed with what does this song mean to me? What did it mean to the artist when they wrote it and all those things, and that mystery like we talk about. And it's a lost art, but I still think that there are pockets of people that are interested in that. I think that these younger people are finding records and they're saying, man, this is cool. This is different. This is a break from all of the cyber stuff.
The world has changed radically, and it had changed from the previous generation to our generation too. And I think basically communally, we were creating a worldview. And every time you heard a record, people were speaking about that and adding their little piece to what was really happening in the world. And our thing was, our parents lived through, or my generation lived through the Depression and the war. And then they wanted a real normal society, and they wanted, and then we grew up and said, we don't have to do that. We can be hippies and have beads, and we don't have to struggle and work every minute because there's plenty of food, there's plenty of everything, and we don't want to be the man. We don't want to have a life where we just dedicate our life to work and stay in the straight and narrow. We're going to be a little psychedelic. We're going to be a little creative. And so all that was coming through this communal vision of the world that we were all creating. And so you got a new record and you just wanted it. Whoa, Jimi Hendrix. Because of the way he becomes the music. He's talking about that. And everybody who came along added their little thing. And so you studied it, and it was just important to who you were. And you can't expect, the world's different now, and I'm sure there's still a lot, and people can go back and discover what we did. And some people, I think, are doing that for the time now. This is a really much more complicated time to create a world vision because the world is very confusing and very complicated. But it was a very, very strong, powerful, beautiful thing. The whole 60s and then the 70s and 80s that followed that, and what was being created was just awesome. And we thought so at the time, and it turns out that, yeah, it was right.
Hey, thanks for watching. Leave us a comment about Jack Tempchin, the Eagles, and this amazing classic rocker below. What are your memories of this album, one of the greatest hits albums ever? If you like our content, we do invite you to subscribe to be a part of this community. To get Eagles merch or their albums, click on our links below. And to get even more content and get insider access, join us on Patreon. We'd love to have you. Help us keep the music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.